Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now I recently paid just over £150 for two eBay gaming PCs. One of them cost just £36.12 and the other £120. So as you can imagine, they certainly differ in spec. They arrived this morning on this pallet, which Harry was only too keen to sniff and then lick for some reason, before being distracted by a pigeon. Neither of these are complete, but I wanted to unbox them, see what sort of condition they're in, as well as check whether or not they're working. First things first, I removed the black cellophane wrap and took a quick peek inside our mystery box of accessories. Or accessory, it's a power cable. Not all that exciting, but always helpful. After removing the bubble wrap, it was clear to see why these two were shipped on a pallet. This chunky boy on the right is way bigger than I thought. This is the Corsair Carbide Air 540. It must be about 10 years old now and cost at least £100 brand new. It houses the newer and more expensive of our parts, but more about that a little later. On the left we have what looks like the Antec 300. This is probably a bit older, maybe 2011, and likely would have cost around 50 quid. It was a more affordable yet still pretty sturdy enclosure. It makes sense that this houses our less expensive, albeit more complete, list of parts. According to the eBay listing, we should have a legendary i5 2500K inside here. This classic quad-core was a go-to choice for many enthusiasts back in the day, thanks to its 4 cores and solid overclocking capabilities. It dates back to 2011, so it makes sense that this system could have been built over 10 years ago, and by the looks of things, never upgraded. The graphics card is a GTX 560, the card I always wanted but could never afford all those years ago. Nowadays it's obsolete for most modern games, considering it has just 1GB of VRAM and game ready driver support ended years ago. This also came out in 2011. It's hanging out the slot a little here, maybe it's had a rough ride. Nothing is broken though. I also noticed that the system fan isn't connected to anything. The modular power supply doesn't actually come with a Molex connector to hook it up to, but never mind, I guess it's just for show. To be honest, this would have been a pretty decent mid-range build over a decade ago. The P8P67M Pro motherboard will also allow for overclocking, which is where the 2500K will be at its best, but we're not going to be doing any of that with the included stock cooler. I was surprised to see 16GB of DDR3 in here, and this will be perfectly sufficient even after I make one or two upgrades. All that this machine lacks is an SSD, so I hooked mine up to the system to check if it was working and to see how well this combo could handle games. Things got off to a good start, but the system began to freeze shortly after booting into Windows. This was resolved by turning off the PC, hitting delete repeatedly to get into the BIOS, and loading the optimized defaults. Turns out the RAM was running at a weird speed that the machine didn't like. I will be upgrading this system in another video, but as it is, this combo can still handle a few games. Sticking to 720p was most certainly a good idea, but a few of the titles installed on my SSD ran fairly well, including Counter-Strike 2, The Witcher 3, Fallout 4 and GTA 5. I dare say we could have pushed a couple of these to 900p, maybe even 1080, but I'll be testing the GTX 560's capabilities further another time. For our average numbers, we saw 89 FPS in Counter-Strike 2 with the lowest settings at 720p. The Witcher 3 was a little more difficult to run for our system here with 33 FPS on average, with a 1% low of 14 and a 0.1% low of 9. This was at the lowest settings with TAAU. Fallout 4 next with the next gen update, the low preset TAA and the default 60 FPS cap in place. We actually managed to hit this cap, averaging 60 here, with a 1% low of 33 and a 0.1% low of 15 on this 1GB card. Finally, it's GTA 5, 720p with the normal settings and the sliders turned up halfway with FXAA for an average of 90 FPS. We saw 58 as that 1% low and 45 as that 0.1% number. With our £36.12 pence gaming PC checked and tested, it was time to turn my attention to the cube-shaped chap slowly making a dent in my lawn. I paid £120 for this one, but all we get here is the case itself, motherboard and processor. A solid starting point to a budget gaming build. This was built by PC Specialist back in the day, though I'm not sure if it was a customer configuration or from a set menu, so to speak, a pre-assembled custom system ready to go. What I do know is that it probably dates to 2017. It has an i7 7700K CPU, a Z270X Gaming Ultra motherboard, or Ultra gaming motherboard, and, well, not much else. Removing the rear panel reveals a huge amount of space for cable management and a Corsair VS550 power supply. The 7700K is a 4-core 8-thread CPU that seems to hold its value here in the UK, and I thought that in combination with the board and case, it really wasn't a bad deal. I've been wanting to put together a build using it for a while, ever since it came out to be honest. We'll need RAM, a GPU and storage, but for now I threw 32 gigs of DDR4 into the mix as well as my RTX 3050 to see if this system worked as it should. Sure enough, this one fired up straight away as well. I learnt my lesson this time and reset the BIOS before doing anything else. At the time of recording, I've been using this i7 machine for about 3-4 hours, and it's clear that this socket 1151 quad-core is showing its age. Would I recommend building a new system from scratch in one of these in 2024? Probably not, unless the processor and motherboard can be found really cheap. That said, finding an old pre-built with the intention of making a few upgrades isn't a bad idea at all, if the price is right of course. I really enjoy buying second-hand machines on eBay, and I'll be upgrading both of them soon in an attempt to give them a bit of a performance boost for 2024. The overclocking potential is there as well for both, so we should be able to squeeze even more from this £150 pair. Hopefully you can join me for those videos as well. When it comes to purchasing used PCs on eBay, it's always worth seeing if you can put together something yourself for the same or less money. That way you have more control over every component that goes into your system. That said, there are plenty of used pre-builts about that can often save you money over buying something individually. All in all, I can't wait to find some parts to upgrade both of these systems, the 2500K machine especially, because it'll be interesting to see what this once go-to CPU for gamers and enthusiasts alike can do in 2024 when paired with something more powerful and perhaps gaming at higher resolutions. Until then though, thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.